Hey, it's Rosa59 here. Today I'm going to show you guys how to make this candle holder. And don't forget, you can download a free set of plans that you can build one for yourself. Alright, to start off for a candle holder, what you're going to do is grab a scrap piece of MDF. I'm just using a 1/4 inch here. This happens to be left over from a laminate floor that I have here. And what I did was I printed out the template, and then after I cut it out, then I just lined it up. Make sure your MDF piece is nice and square. And then you just want to do it longer than what you need it for, because you'll need a little bit extra. Is trace it out, draw a line on the sides, on both sides, and then you're going to take it to the bandsaw, cut it out on the bandsaw, and then you're going to sand it nice and smooth with 100 grit. And the reason for that is if you leave any bumps or anything like that, because we're going to be using the router afterwards, it will copy that. So make sure it's nice and smooth and you have it to the exact shape that you would like it to be. Now I'm using a piece of ash wood here, and I cut it to 12.5 inches long by 5.5 inches long, and the thickness I have is 1 3/4. I made sure this piece is all nice and square. Now what you want to do is take your template, your piece of paper template, and you want to trace it out on your piece of wood. Make sure it's nice and square. Then what you're going to do is back it off just a 1/16 and make a mark at the bottom, in the middle, and then at the top. And then I used double-sided tape on my actual MDF template, and then I stuck it on from, I think I can show you, I don't know if you guys can see it here from my line, but it's just a 1/16 down. And the reason for that is offset, because when you use your bushing, I'm using a 1/4 inch bushing inside dimension. Outside I think is 5/16, and I'm using 1/8 straight bit. And the reason for that is because the bushing will offset it just a little bit. Now you want to take it to the bandsaw, and you just want to cut right down in the middle. You don't want to cut down in the edges. If you find for whatever reason the router leaves just a little bit on the overhang, which I found it did just slightly, just use 100 grit sandpaper, and I just sanded it nice and smooth, and I found that worked really well. Now to make the decorative design, I'm using walnut to give some contrast, and I just cut down, it's 1/2 inch walnut by 1 3/4, because that is the thickness of my piece of ash that I have. And then I just drew a line down in the center, went to the bandsaw, cut it in half. After I cut it in half, I took it to the planer and planed it down to 1/16. Now I'm ready to glue up my project, and I'm going to use Tybond wood glue, and I'm just going to go ahead and glue all this up. So I had just a little bit of trouble doing the glue up just because it ended up sliding all over the place on me, but eventually I got it, and this is what it looks like all glued up. I'm just going to go ahead and let this dry now for 8 hours. Now you want to take your template, cut it out, and trace it out in pencil, and then once you've done that, I took it to the miter saw and then cut it. That way then you've got two ends and both tops here that are perfectly square. After I took it out of the clamps, what I did was took it to the joiner, made it nice and clean on one side, and then on the other side took it to the planer and planed it down to 1.5 inches. And then I just lined up from my template here from paper, lined it all nicely up, and then I just took my pencil, traced it all the way around, and then I just used my self-centering punch to punch for the holes now that I got everything all nice and lined up. That way when I'm ready to drill the holes, everything else all nice and square. Now you want to drill your holes out at the drill press, and I'm using a 2-inch Forstner bit, and I'm going down 3/8 deep. Right now for sanding, just used my orbital sander. I found that worked the best. I just kind of held this up and started with 100 grit and then finished with 150 grit. And this is what it looks like after all sanding. Now for adding the feet in, I just made this little gauge here. Just used a scrap piece of wood and measured 1 inch and 3/8. And I found that kind of helped for me to kind of line up in the center, 1 inch there, and then 3/8 on the top and on the bottom. And I just added some wood glue and just used my pin nailer 23 gauge at 2 inches long and just nailed them in. You want to add a clear coat, and I use Varthane, just a floor finish, satin finish. This is just what I had left over, and I did 3 coats on the bottom and on the sides and 3 coats on the top. For the glasses, all I did was some glass etching. I did some flowers on each of them, and then I found a technique online by using Mod Podge, water, and food coloring, and I just tinted it just a little bit of purple. The only thing keep in mind is that it's not a permanent effect with the Mod Podge technique, because I did find in some areas that when I was scraping it did come off, so just keeping that in mind when you're cleaning it or anything like that. I would not put it in the dishwasher or anything like that. I would just wipe it down just with maybe a very damp paper towel. To make it even a cooler effect is by adding in just a candle. I'm not using a real candle, I'm just using a battery operated candle. I just find it looks great, and this is what it'll look like in the dark. Thanks for stopping by my channel, and go to the video description link below for free plans. Don't forget to comment on this video. If you would like to see more of these videos, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.